That's not where the money goes." Her whispered words shattered the crystal-perfect atmosphere of the charity gala. Sarah's hands trembled as she clutched her serving tray, watching the wealthy guests raise their $1,000 champagne glasses to toast their own generosity. The numbers didn't lie. She'd seen the real books, hidden beneath fake spreadsheets and glossy promises. Only 12% actually reached the children they claimed to help. The rest vanished into offshore accounts and luxury purchases, masked by charitable write-offs. In the shadowed corner of the grand ballroom, a man in a simple black suit watched silently. The Golden Crown Hotel's grand ballroom sparkled with wealth and privilege. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow reflections across marble floors, while waitstaff in pristine uniforms navigated between clusters of Silicon Valley titans and Hollywood elite. At the center stood Marcus Sterling, venture capitalist turned philanthropist, his $10,000 suit and practiced smile a masterpiece of deception. He'd orchestrated everything perfectly: the celebrity guest list, the heartstring-pulling presentation, the carefully edited financial reports. The evening's donations would reach millions. The Children's Hospital would see pennies. And Sarah had proof. Sarah's heart pounded as she approached Sterling's inner circle, her phone heavy in her apron pocket with its damning evidence. One email forward could expose everything. The wealthy guests parted around her like water around a stone, their eyes sliding past her uniform as if she were invisible. Sterling's shark-like smile turned her way, sensing a disturbance in his perfectly orchestrated evening. In the corner, Keanu Reeves set down his untouched champagne glass and straightened his tie. The truth was about to get a powerful ally. Sarah hadn't planned on becoming a whistleblower. 6 months of serving drinks to Silicon Valley's elite had taught her to keep her head down and her observations to herself. But last week, while cleaning Sterling's private office after a late-night strategy session, she'd discovered the truth behind his philanthropic empire. A misplaced USB drive, forgotten in the rush to reach another cocktail party, had revealed everything: the offshore accounts, the shell companies, the carefully constructed web of lies that transformed charitable donations into private profits. The numbers haunted her every night since: 12% to the Children's Hospital, 15% to administrative costs. The rest disappeared into a labyrinth of private accounts and luxury purchases. Meanwhile, her little sister Emily lay in that same hospital, fighting leukemia with outdated equipment, because the pediatric oncology ward lacked funding. The irony twisted like a knife in her chest. Sterling's voice carried across the ballroom now, smooth as aged whiskey, promising hope while dealing in despair. "Together," he was saying, "we can change these children's lives forever." He wasn't wrong about the forever part, just not in the way his adoring audience imagined. The evidence felt like fire in her pocket: spreadsheets, bank statements, emails that stripped away Sterling's philanthropic facade. Each step toward his circle sent tremors through her body, the weight of her decision growing heavier with every passing moment. Around her, Silicon Valley billionaires and entertainment moguls dabbed at tears as Sterling showcased photos of smiling children, each image a masterpiece of manipulation. "Just last month," he announced, his voice catching with practiced emotion, "we provided vital equipment to 3 hospitals." Sarah's fingers clenched around her serving tray. She knew exactly what had happened to that equipment budget. It had bought Sterling's new yacht, listed under a shell company with a name mockingly similar to the hospital's foundation. From his corner, Keanu Reeves watched the performance with quiet intensity. Unlike the other celebrities present, he'd declined the spotlight, choosing instead to observe from the shadows. His eyes tracked Sterling's movements with the focused attention of someone who recognized a predator's grace. When his gaze briefly met Sarah's, she saw something that made her heart skip: recognition, not of her face, but of her purpose. He knew something wasn't right. Sterling's presentation reached its crescendo, his voice resonating with carefully crafted sincerity. "Tonight, we're not just raising money," he declared, spreading his arms wide, encompassing the glittering crowd. "We're raising hope. Every dollar you give goes directly to saving children's lives." The lie hung in the air like crystal chimes, beautiful and fragile. Sarah's trembling fingers pulled up the email on her phone. Proof of last month's transfer, millions diverted from medical equipment to a private account in the Cayman Islands. Her thumb hovered over the forward button, ready to send it to every journalist in her contact list. One press could bring it all crashing down. That's when Sterling's head of security noticed her lingering too long near the stage. His hand touched his earpiece, eyes narrowing as he started moving through the crowd. In the corner, Keanu set his phone down, screen glowing with the Hospital Foundation's financial records. He'd done his homework before attending. The same records Sarah had found, but with one crucial difference. His reputation gave them weight. As security approached Sarah, Keanu pushed off from his wall, moving with quiet purpose. The stage was set for truth to meet power. The security guard's hand closed around Sarah's arm just as she reached the edge of Sterling's circle. "Miss, you need to come with me." His voice was quiet but firm, designed not to disturb the carefully orchestrated atmosphere. Around them, wealthy donors continued writing checks, their pens scratching out amounts that would mostly fund Sterling's next vacation home. "Actually," Sarah said, her voice stronger than she felt, "I need to speak to Mr. Sterling about the Foundation's finances." The words cut through the nearest conversation circle like a blade. Several heads turned, eyebrows raised at the audacity of a waitress addressing the great Marcus Sterling directly. Sterling's reaction was a masterclass in controlled authority. His smile remained perfect as he turned, only his eyes betraying a flash of cold calculation. "My dear," he said, voice dripping with practiced concern, "if you have questions about our finances, I'm sure my team would be happy to direct you to our public reports." "I'm not interested in your public reports, Mr. Sterling." Sarah held up her phone, her hand surprisingly steady. "I'm interested in the real numbers, like the $3 million that was supposed to buy MRI machines but instead bought your yacht, Hope's Legacy." The silence that followed was absolute. Sterling's smile flickered for just a fraction of a second, long enough for those closest to notice. The security guard's grip tightened, and two more men in dark suits began moving through the crowd toward them. "I think," Sterling said softly, his voice now carrying an edge of steel, "you're suffering from some confusion. Jenkins, please escort this young woman to my office. We'll discuss her concerns privately." The threat in his words was clear to everyone within earshot. Several guests suddenly found their champagne glasses fascinating, while others began to drift away, sensing an unpleasant scene brewing. In the shifting crowd, Keanu Reeves moved closer, his presence still unnoticed, but his intent clear in every calculated step. The security guards had taken 3 steps toward Sterling's office with Sarah when a quiet voice cut through the tension. "I'd be interested in seeing those numbers too." The words carried the same gentle authority that had made Keanu Reeves a Hollywood legend, commanding attention without demanding it. Sterling's perfect composure cracked for a moment as he turned to face this unexpected complication. The room's energy shifted palpably. Celebrities were supposed to be part of his show, not disrupt it. "Mr. Reeves," he recovered smoothly, "I assure you, this is simply a disgruntled employee making baseless accusations. Nothing that requires your concern." "Maybe," Keanu said, moving closer, with that same measured calm that had defined his most iconic roles. "But I've found that people risking everything to speak up usually have a reason." He stood beside Sarah now, his presence forcing the security guards to release their grip, especially when they're speaking up about children's hospitals. The crowd had stopped pretending not to watch. Phones emerged discreetly, their cameras capturing the confrontation. Sterling's calculation was visible in his eyes. The situation was spiraling beyond his control. One of Hollywood's most beloved actors was now standing beside his accuser, lending her credibility with each passing second. "The young lady has evidence," Keanu continued, his voice carrying easily across the now silent ballroom. "I have some interesting documents myself. Maybe we should compare notes." He pulled out his own phone, and Sterling's face went ash-white as he recognized the financial records displayed on the screen. Right here, in front of everyone who's donated their money to help sick kids. Seems like the right audience for this conversation, doesn't it? Sterling's composure crumbled like a sandcastle, hit by a wave. His eyes darted between Keanu, Sarah, and the growing crowd of attentive donors, calculating odds and outcomes with the speed of a desperate man. The security team stood frozen, awaiting orders that could only make the situation worse. "My sister is in your hospital right now." Sarah's voice gained strength with each word. Emotions she'd bottled up for months, finally breaking free. "She's fighting leukemia with outdated equipment, while you buy yachts and vacation homes with money meant to save children like her." The crowd's murmuring grew louder. Someone in the back shouted, "Show us the proof." Others joined in, the mood shifting from uncomfortable observation to active engagement. Phones recorded everything, the story already spreading beyond the ballroom's walls. "You don't understand the complexities of running a charitable foundation," Sterling attempted, his practiced charm failing him for the first time. "Administrative costs, operational expenses. Like the $2 million in administrative costs transferred to your private account in Geneva last week." Keanu's quiet interjection landed like a thunderbolt. He held up his phone, displaying bank statements that made several nearby donors gasp. "I did some research before coming tonight. Seems like the only complex thing here is your fraud scheme." Sterling's hand moved toward his jacket pocket, where a phone could summon more security or lawyers. But he froze as camera flashes intensified, every movement now documented, every gesture scrutinized. The power had shifted completely. His carefully constructed world of deception was collapsing, and the demolition crew consisted of a waitress with a conscience and a movie star with a commitment to truth. Sterling made his final play with the desperation of a cornered man. "This is ridiculous," he announced, trying to address the crowd rather than his accusers. "We've raised millions for children's health care, built wings of hospitals, saved lives, and you're going to let one disgruntled employee and an actor destroy all that good work? No one's destroying anything except you." Keanu's response carried the weight of quiet certainty. He stepped forward, phone extended to display its screen to the nearest group of donors. "These documents show exactly where those millions went. 12% to the hospitals. That's not building wings, that's building mansions." The evidence spread through the crowd like wildfire. Donors who had written checks minutes before were now photographing the documentation with shaking hands. Sarah's voice joined in, steady and clear. "Check your phones. I just forwarded the complete financial records to everyone in this room." Sterling's face contorted as phones began chiming throughout the ballroom. His security team shifted uncomfortably. There was no protocol for handling viral truth. A prominent tech CEO in the front row stood up abruptly, tearing his just-written check in half. Others followed suit, the sound of ripping paper a percussion line to Sterling's downfall. "You think you can just walk in here and destroy everything I've built?" Sterling's voice cracked, his public persona finally shattering completely. He jabbed a finger toward Sarah. "You're nothing. A servant. Who's going to believe you over me?" "I believe her," Keanu said, and those three quiet words carried more weight than all of Sterling's shouting. "And so does everyone else here. The question is, what are we going to do about it?" The ballroom erupted into chaos as donors rushed to stop payment on their checks. Sterling's carefully orchestrated evening had transformed into a viral exposé, with dozens of phones live streaming his downfall. But above the chaos, Keanu's voice commanded attention once again, this time addressing the crowd. "Real charity isn't about galas or recognition," he said, his words cutting through the noise. "It's about actually helping people, like Sarah's sister, fighting cancer with outdated equipment while millions meant for her care bought someone a yacht." He turned to Sterling, who stood frozen in the spotlight of public scrutiny. "You didn't just steal money, you stole hope from kids who needed it most." A woman in designer jewelry stood up, her voice shaking with anger. "My grandson was treated in that hospital's cancer ward. They told us they couldn't afford new treatment equipment." More voices joined in, personal stories of delayed treatments and denied care crashing against Sterling's crumbling defense. "I can explain everything," Sterling attempted, but Sarah stepped forward, holding up her phone like a sword of truth. "Let me explain instead," she said, her voice carrying the weight of 6 months' silent witness. "Every dollar you gave tonight would have been split between offshore accounts and luxury purchases, just like the last event and the one before that. While children like my sister Emily fought for their lives with inadequate resources, Mr. Sterling was shopping for his third vacation home." The evidence on hundreds of phones told the story: bank transfers, shell companies, falsified reports. Each detail another nail in the coffin of Sterling's reputation, each revelation sparking new waves of outrage through the crowd. Sterling's world collapsed in real time as law enforcement officers emerged from the crowd. 2 FBI agents who had been monitoring the foundation for months. Their investigation now accelerated by the public revelation. As they approached Sterling, Keanu stepped forward one last time, his voice carrying a weight that silenced the chaos. "Here's what's going to happen," he said, not just to Sterling, but to everyone filming. "Every donor in this room will get their money back, but instead of walking away, we're going to rebuild this foundation the right way, transparent, honest, actually helping kids who need it." He turned to Sarah, "with people who really care in charge." The FBI agents were reading Sterling his rights now, their voices a formal counterpoint to the murmuring crowd. But something unprecedented was happening among the wealthy donors. A tech billionaire stood up, phone in hand. "I'll double my donation if it goes to a legitimate board." Another joined in. "Triple it with proper oversight." The pledges cascaded through the room, a tidal wave of genuine philanthropy replacing Sterling's corrupt facade. Sarah's phone buzzed. A message from the hospital. Through tears, she read it aloud. Emily's last treatment was delayed due to equipment maintenance. Now, we know why. She looked up at Keanu, who nodded with quiet understanding. "The first new equipment order goes in tonight," he said firmly. "No more delays, no more excuses." He addressed the crowd one final time, his words captured by dozens of cameras. "Real change doesn't come from fancy parties and false promises. It comes from people willing to stand up for truth, no matter the cost. Sometimes all it takes is one person brave enough to speak up." The story exploded across social media before Sterling even reached the police station. Video clips of his exposure went viral, with Keanu's quiet intervention and Sarah's brave stand becoming symbols of genuine change against corruption. Within hours, the #sign Real Charity topped trending lists worldwide. The hospital's pediatric ward transformed overnight. Emergency board meetings were held via video conference, with wealthy donors who'd witnessed the gala's events demanding immediate action. The first new MRI machine was ordered before dawn, with specialized pediatric oncology equipment following close behind. Sarah's sister Emily would have her delayed treatment first thing in the morning. 3 more whistleblowers from other fraudulent charities came forward the next day, inspired by Sarah's courage. Each revelation sparked new investigations, new reforms, new commitments to transparency. The ripple effect touched every corner of the philanthropic world, forcing long overdue scrutiny of charitable organizations nationwide. Sarah found herself at the center of a movement she'd never imagined. Job offers flooded in, not for serving drinks, but for overseeing charitable compliance, for speaking at ethics conferences, for helping build systems to prevent future fraud. 1 month after the gala, Keanu Reeves stood in the newly renovated pediatric oncology ward, watching Emily ring the remission bell. The sound echoed through halls now filled with state-of-the-art equipment, each piece tagged with transparent documentation of its funding source. Sarah, now the foundation's new compliance director, had instituted a system where donors could track their contributions in real time. The reformed foundation became a blueprint for charitable organizations worldwide. Transparency wasn't just a buzzword anymore. It was a mandatory standard. Other celebrities followed Keanu's example, doing due diligence before lending their names to causes. The era of blind trust in charitable glamour had ended. Sterling's arrest triggered a domino effect through the philanthropic world. 3 major foundation CEOs resigned preemptively. 5 others underwent voluntary audits. The #sign Show the Books became a rallying cry for donors and beneficiaries alike. What started as one waitress's stand for truth had evolved into a global movement for charitable accountability. The most profound change, however, was in how people viewed philanthropy itself. The age of glittering galas and vanity donations gave way to something more authentic, real people making real change, with every dollar accounted for. 6 months later, Sarah found herself back in the Golden Crown Hotel's ballroom. This time, she wasn't carrying a serving tray. She was delivering a keynote speech at the first international conference on charitable transparency. The audience included former donors from that fateful night, now passionate advocates for reform. Keanu sat in the front row, the same quiet presence that had changed everything. He'd declined the opportunity to speak, insisting that Sarah's voice was the one people needed to hear. His actions had sparked the change, but her courage had lit the flame. Real change, Sarah concluded her speech, looking at her sister Emily in the audience, healthy and glowing, doesn't come from grand gestures or elaborate galas. It comes from ordinary people choosing to do the right thing, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. She held up her old serving name tag. You don't need power or status to make a difference. You just need the courage to speak truth. The standing ovation that followed wasn't just for her words. It was for a transformation that had touched countless lives. In the end, the greatest charity wasn't money or publicity, but the simple act of standing up for what's right.